All right, folks, today we're going to be talking about the unit circle for the first time. So we're going to be talking about key unit circle angles in degrees and radians, and later on we're also going to be talking about reference angles. So if you've never heard this word unit circle before, all the unit circle is a circle with a center at the origin, and it has a radius of 1. So to go from the center of the circle to the outside, it is 1 unit. That's why it's called the unit circle. We'll be digging into it a lot over the next couple weeks, but in order to do that, we need to know all of these important angles that can be found on the unit circle in both degrees and radians. So in this lesson, I'm going to try to break it down as simply as possible so that you can recognize where each of those unit circle angles lies. One thing that's important to know is that unit circle angles, the important ones, will always be in increments of 30 degrees, 60 degrees, or 45 degrees. Those should sound familiar because of your special right triangles. And believe it or not, those special right triangles will show up later in the week. Now, if you look forward in your notes, you'll notice that I put a couple circles on the front page and a couple circles on the back page of your notes, all with different kind of segments cut out. Like I just said, when you count your unit circle angles, they're always going to be in increments of 30, 60, and 45. So let's look at this first circle. I want y'all to try to look at that circle and figure out some key angles that you remember from last week when we talked through this. Hopefully some key ones that go through your head are 0, 90, 180, and 270. Now, you'll notice that this additional line that I've added here goes right smack in between 0 and 90. It's in the middle of each of these quadrants. What measurement is right in between 0 and 90? Hopefully you're thinking 45 degrees. This circle is going to count in increments of 45 degrees. So we have 0 plus 45 gets us to 45. 45 plus 45 gets us to 90. And then we're going to keep adding 45 as we go around the unit circle. 90 plus another 45 degrees would give us 135 degrees. So 135 degrees is a key unit circle angle. If we keep going around, 135 plus 45 gets us to 180. 180 plus 45 gets us to 225. So 225 is another key unit circle angle. Add 45 again, you get to 270. Add 270 plus 45, we get to 315 degrees. And then if you add 45 one more time, you would get to 360 degrees. Now, that is all your unit circle angles in 45-degree increments in degrees, obviously. Now I want y'all to think about what this would be in radians. You'll remember that halfway around the circle is pi. Now, when we counted by 45 degrees, how many pieces was 1 pi broken into? 1, 2, 3, 4. So each of these pieces is 1/4 pi. So we call 45 degrees the same thing as pi over 4. 45 degrees and pi over 4 are congruent to each other. They're the same thing. One's in degrees, one's in radians. Every time you move another 45-degree increment, you are adding another 1/4. So we have 0 plus 1/4 gets us to pi over 4. 1/4 plus 1/4 gets us to 2/4, which is just 1/2 pi, or pi over 2. And that's one of those angles that we talked about last week. 1/2 plus another 1/4, or just count how many fourths we have here, gets us to 3/4 pi, or 3 pi over 4. Then, if you add another 1/4, 3/4 plus 1/4 gets us to 4/4, but 4 over 4 is just equal to 1. If we keep on adding 4/4 or 1 whole, plus another fourth, we get to 5 pi over 4. You can also just count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pi over 4. Then we get to 6 pi over 4. 6 pi over 4 simplifies to 3 pi over 2. 315 gets us to 7 pi over 4. And then finally, we get all the way around to 8 pi over 4, which is just 2 whole pi. These angles along the outside are angles that you're going to need to recognize going forward. Those are key unit circle angles, all in increments of 45 degrees. We'll be putting them on one big circle on the back, but keep those in mind for later on. Let's move on to the next circle. You'll notice in this circle, the pieces of the pie have different widths than the one before. So, just like last time, I want y'all to remember that this measurement on the far left side is equal to 1 pi. This is still 0. It's also 180 degrees. So if we took 180, and now we're breaking it into 1, 2, 3 pieces, think to yourself, what is 180 divided by 3? 180 divided by 3 is 60. So each of these pieces represents a increment of 60 degrees. So this first one in the first quadrant is 60, because 0 plus 60 gets us to 60. Sorry about that bell. We'll keep adding 60 as we go around. So 60 plus 60 gets us to 120. 120 plus 60 gets us to 180. 180 plus 60 gets us to 240. 240 plus 60 gets us to 300. And then 300 plus 60, of course, gets us to 360. So those are all the increments of the 60-degree angles in degrees. Now, I want y'all to think about, when we're reminding ourselves that this is pi, look at 1 whole pi. How many pieces was 1 whole pi broken into? 3 pieces. So each section represents a third of the pie, or 1/3 pi. So we can label this 60 degrees is the same as 1/3 pi, or pi over 3. And then you keep adding pi over 3. So pi over 3 plus another pi over 3 gets us to 2 pi over 3. So we have 1/3, 2/3. So 120 degrees is the same as 2 pi over 3. Then you keep going around and add another third, and you get to 3 over 3, which is 1 whole pi. 3 over 3 plus another pi over 3 gets us to 4 pi over 3. You can also count this out. We have 1 pi over 3, 2 pi over 3, 3 pi over 3, 4 pi over 3. Our next one would be 5 pi over 3. And then if you get all the way back around, you get to 6 pi over 3, but 6 pi over 3 is just 2 pi. So those are your key unit circle angles, counting by 60s. Of circles, and then at the very end you'll be able to, when you look on the back side, you'll notice that we have one more, and just like we started off with before, let's think about how this is 180 degrees. Oh, not highlight, sorry. This is 180 degrees. This is 0. How many pieces has it been chopped into now? If you count each piece of the pie, you get 6. 180 divided by 6 is 30 degrees. So each of these increments is counting by 30. So we have 0 plus 30 is 30. 30 plus 60 is, 30 plus 30 is 60. 60 plus 30 is 90. 90 plus 30 is 120. 120 plus 30 is 150. And you keep on going around. 180 plus 30, we get 210 degrees. Plus 30, we get 240. Plus 30, we get 270. Plus 30, we get 300. 330, and then all the way back around to 360. So when we count by 30s, those are the angles that we get. Let's talk about what that would be when we deal with radians. Now remember that this piece over here is 1 pi. How many pieces was this broken into? 6. So each of these pieces, you're adding 1/6. So this is 1/6 pi, because it's 1/6 away from 0. Keep adding 1/6. 1/6 plus 1/6 is 2/6. But 2/6 is the same as 1/3. We have already talked about this pi over 3 radian on the other circle. Then if we add 2/6 plus a 6, we get to 3/6, but 3/6 is the same as 1/2. Then we get to 4/6, but 4/6 is 2 pi over 3. Then we get to 5 pi over 6. Add another 6, we get to 6 pi over 6, and that is the same as 1 whole. Keep on adding your 6. 6 over 6 plus 1 over 6 gets us to 7/6. Then we get 8/6, which is just 4 pi over 3. Then we get 9/6, which is just 3 pi over 2. Then 10/6, which is just 5 pi over 3. And then we get to my very favorite radian, 11 pi over 6. And then all the way back around is 12 over 6, which is just 2 pi. Those are your key unit circle angles counting by 30s. The last thing we're going to do here is throw it all together. So I would encourage you to get maybe 4 different colors out so that you can fill this in appropriately. The easiest ones to first plug in are your axis angles. So your axis angles are the ones that land on these 90-degree increments. So if we're starting out here, we have 0 degrees. Then we have 90 degrees, 180 degrees, 270 degrees. Those are the ones we talked about last week. 0 degrees is the same thing as 0 radians, so I'm going to use the outer box to represent the radians. We have pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, and of course this is, 360 degrees, which is the same thing as 2 pi. The easiest ones to put on first onto your unit circle are your increments of 45, I think. The 45-degree angles land in the middle here. So we're going to go around there, and we're going to add 45. So this is going to be 45 degrees. Remember, 45 plus 45 was 90. 90 plus 45, we get 135. 135 plus 45, we get 180. 180 plus 45, we get 225. 225 plus 45, we get 270. 270 plus 45, we get 310. And then you would get back around to 360. Remember, those broke the unit circle, the circle into fourths. So pi over 45-degree increments always go with pi over 4. So we have pi over 4, 3 pi over 4, 5 pi over 4, and 7 pi over 4. Remember, if you're counting by fourths, you have 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, 4/4, 5/4, 6/4, 7/4, and then 8/4. Let's get a different color out and try counting by the 60s. So you should remember that this high up one was 60 degrees. If you added another 60, we got to 120. Add another 60, you're going to get to 180. So we have 60, 120, 180. 180 plus 60 gets us to 240. 240 plus 60 gets us to 300. 300 plus 60 gets us to 360. Remember that when we counted by 60s, it divided the pi into 3 pieces. So this is pi over 3, 2 pi over 3, 3 pi over 3 is back where pi is. 3 pi over 3 plus another pi over 3 gets us to 4 pi over 3, 5 pi over 3, and then back to 6 pi over 3. So those are your key unit circle angles counting by 60. Get your last color out. And we're going to count by 30s. So this one, this little angle down here is 30 degrees because it's 30 degrees away from 0. 30, we did plus 30, but that one's already filled in. Plus another 30 gets us to 90. Plus another 30 gets us to 120. Plus another 30 gets us to 150. 150 plus 30 gets us to 180. 180 plus 30 gets us to 210 degrees. That's a 210. I don't like how messy that is. Just a second. So this is 210 degrees. 210 plus 30 gets us to 240, then 270, then 300, then 330 degrees, and then all the way around to 360. You'll remember that if you count how many pieces it broke the pie into, it was 1/6 pie. So this is pi over 6. This is 5 pi over 6, because it only takes 30 more degrees, or 1/6 of the pi, to get back around to pi. This is 7 pi over 6, because it's 1/6 away from 1 whole pi. And the last one over here is 11 pi over 6. This lovely circle that you've just formed here with all these lovely angles are your key unit circle angles that you'll need to know for the remainder of the year. We'll be practicing those in your homework tonight.